Patty woke at 6 in the morning, not to the sound of an alarm but to the quiet certainty that it was time. Her eyes opened before she moved, adjusting to the dim gray light resting gently against the curtains. Morning always arrived the same way in this house, not with urgency, but with permission. The air felt still, settled, like the world had taken a breath and was waiting for her to take one too. She stayed there for a moment, listening. The refrigerator hummed down the hall, steady and reliable. Somewhere in the walls, pipes shifted softly, adjusting to the temperature. Outside, a car passed, tires brushing against the street in a way that sounded almost polite. Patty liked knowing these sounds. She liked that they showed up when expected. Predictability, to her, was not boring. It was earned. She turned her head slightly and saw Miguel's side of the bed already empty. The sheets smoothed down the way he always left it. He had work early today. That wasn't unusual, but it was different enough to change the shape of the morning. Patty smiled faintly, already knowing he'd tried to move quietly. He always did. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, letting her feet meet the floor. Cool, honest. That small shock always helped her orient herself, pulled her fully into the day. She sat there for a beat longer, hands resting on her knees, posture straight, without effort. Mornings had a rhythm, and she had learned not to rush them. In the bathroom, the light flicked on softly, illuminating the mirror she'd stood in front of thousands of times. Patty reached for her comb and began working through her hair with care, her movements steady and practiced. This was not vanity. This was preparation. The woman looking back at her was familiar, reliable. Patty met her own eyes and nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement between them. Out in the hallway, she turned off the bedroom light and continued toward the living room. Christmas decorations still filled the space, lights resting patiently along the edges of the room. Ornaments catching faint glimmers of morning. Patty paused there, hands on her hips, taking it all in. She loved this part, loved knowing she had taken the time to make the house feel warm, intentional, alive, nothing flashy, just right. Miguel's voice floated in from the kitchen. Morning, superstar. Patty smiled before she answered. You're loud. I tried not to be, he said, appearing in the doorway with the mug in his hand. But the floor betrayed me. It always does, she said. You just never learn. Miguel laughed, the easy kind that belonged to years of shared mornings. You up early? I don't sleep in, Patty replied. I just wait patiently. He took a sip of his coffee and leaned against the counter. Big day. It's just the casino, she said, adjusting one of the ornaments slightly. I'm not meeting the mayor. Miguel raised an eyebrow. You say that now. She glanced at him, amused. You already gone. Couple minutes, he said. Wanted to make sure you were settled first. Patty walked into the kitchen, purse already resting on the chair. Bernice will be here on time. She always is. I know, Miguel said. I like that about her. Patty nodded. Me too. He reached out and straightened the collar of her jacket without thinking. The motion so familiar it barely registered. You got everything. She lifted her purse slightly. Everything I need. And everything you want? He asked. She smiled. That's between me and the slot machines. Miguel laughed. Fair enough. He glanced at the walker positioned neatly by the wall, those wheels ready. Patty followed his gaze. They've been ready. Miguel leaned in and kissed her forehead, warm and unhurried. Call me when you get there. I will, she said. You go have a good day. He picked up his keys, pausing at the door to look back at her. Don't win too much without me. I make no promises, Patty said. The door closed softly behind him, leaving the house quiet again, but lighter somehow. Patty took a breath and let it out slowly. Everything was on track. She moved through the living room with intention, adjusting a pillow here, nudging a picture frame there. Each movement was small but meaningful, like punctuation in a sentence only she could read. The house responded in its own way, creaking softly beneath her steps, holding steady as it always did. She layered her jacket, then her coat, buttons aligning easily beneath her fingers. The hat came last, always last. She placed it carefully, knowing exactly how to preserve the shape she'd worked for earlier. A glance in the mirror confirmed what she already knew. She looked ready. The purse strap slid easily over her shoulder. The walker was positioned just right. Patty stood still for a moment, taking in the room one last time. This pause mattered. It always had. Then came the knock. Sharp, familiar. Patty smiled before she moved. "Don't rush," Bernice called from the porch. "I know you're dramatic." Patty opened the door, the crisp air brushing her face. Bernice stood there grinning, bundled up, eyes bright. "Well, look at you," Bernice said, nodding toward the walker. "Nice wheels. You upgrading without telling nobody now?" Patty laughed, shaking her head. "Behave." Bernice tapped the frame lightly. "I'm just saying, you might beat me to the bus." Patty stepped forward, adjusting her hat, her smile easy and unguarded. The morning felt open now, full of possibility. And if someone was paying attention, they'd know they weren't just watching a woman leave her house. They were stepping into Patty's universe, where meaning lived in the moments before the day ever truly began. Bernice stepped aside, giving Patty the space she needed as she guided herself onto the porch. The walker's wheels clicking softly against the worn wooden boards in a steady, familiar rhythm. The sound echoed faintly in the quiet morning, a small announcement that the day had officially begun. Cold air rushed toward Patty the moment she crossed the threshold, sharper and more honest than the carefully held warmth inside the house. It slipped beneath her coat and brushed her cheeks, brisk and unapologetic. Patty paused, letting it settle, letting it wake her fully. She liked the way the cold demanded attention instead of comfort. It made her feel present, anchored in her body, and the moment. The porch light still glowed overhead, casting a pale circle around them and catching on the metal frame of the walker. Somewhere nearby, a bird startled from a bush, its wings fluttering briefly before the street fell quiet again. Patty adjusted her grip, feeling the solid reassurance of the handles beneath her gloves. Bernice watched her with practiced patience, already shifting her weight toward the driveway. "Cars warmed up," Bernice said, her voice easy, practical. As she reached for the door handle, a thin ribbon of warm air escaped when the door opened, curling into the cold like an invitation. "I know better than to make you sit in a cold seat." Patty's mouth curved into a small, knowing smile. "Smart woman," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I don't forgive that kind of thing." Bernice laughed softly and held the passenger door wide open. The gesture, casual but attentive, as Patty turned her body with care. Her movements were practiced and precise, the kind that came from repetition and trust in her own timing. She backed herself into the seat slowly, feeling for the edge before committing her weight, refusing to be hurried by the cold or the moment. The cushion met her exactly where she expected it to, firm and familiar. Bernice waited without comment, watching, ready only, if needed. The walker folded with a clean, familiar snap, its metal joints clicking into place like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Bernice placed it gently in the back seat, angled just the way Patty liked, where it wouldn't slide or knock against anything. The door closed with a solid thud, sealing in the warmth. Nothing rattled as the car settled. Nothing felt rushed or out of order. Patty reached for the seatbelt and drew it across herself, tugging once to be sure it lay properly over her coat. The belt clicked into place. A small sound of certainty. She rested her hands in her lap, fingers relaxed, and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Through the windshield, the street stretched out as it always had, quiet, familiar, patient. Houses lined both sides, steady and unassuming, the kind that had watched decades of mornings pass without asking for attention. Bernice turned the key, and the car responded with the low, confident hum that vibrated gently beneath the seats. The sound was steady, reliable, like it had no intention of failing them today. Warm air pushed through the vents, fogging the windshield just enough to soften the edges of the street. Bernice checked her mirrors out of habit before easing her foot off the brake. "You ready to lose some money?" she asked, her tone light as she guided the car away from the curb. Patty's smile came easily, settled and "I'm ready to donate responsibly," she replied, her voice carrying quiet resolve. The tires whispered against the pavement as they moved forward. For a moment, neither of them spoke, and the silence felt earned rather than empty. Houses slid past the windows in unhurried succession, each one familiar in its place. Patty's eyes followed the rhythm of the street, marking the corner mailbox that leaned just slightly to the left. The house, with the porch lights still on, glowed faintly, stubborn against the morning. The old tree near the bend held on to its leaves like it always did, refusing to surrender to the season. Patty took comfort in the order of it all, seeing each landmark appear exactly when it should told her the world was still keeping its promises. As Bernice guided the car onto the main road, the sky above them began to shift, the heavy gray thinning into something lighter and more forgiving. The change was subtle but unmistakable, as if morning were slowly making up its mind. Pale light stretched across the tops of buildings and brushed the road ahead, promising a day that might behave itself. Traffic was sparse, each car moving with quiet courtesy, as though everyone understood the unspoken rules of the early hour. There was no rushing, no unnecessary noise, just engines humming and turn signals blinking in calm agreement. Bernice reached for the radio and turned the dial with practiced ease. After a brief burst of static, an old song filled the car, familiar and the kind that didn't ask to be cool. The melody settled into the space between them, warm and reassuring. Bernice glanced over briefly. "You bring your lucky card?" she asked, her voice casual but knowing. Patty didn't look down as she answered. She tapped her purse once, firm and certain. "Front pocket," she said. "Same as always." Bernice nodded, satisfied. "Good," she replied, eyes back on the road. "Don't need no bad energy today." The bus pickup lot came into view not long after, opening up into a wide stretch of pavement that felt almost ceremonial in its familiarity. The early light spread thinly across it, revealing clusters of people already in place. A few stood near the curb, bundled in coats and hats, their breath visible as they shifted from foot to foot. Others waited inside their cars, engines idling softly, radios murmuring to themselves. Patty took it all in at once and recognized nearly everyone without trying. There was the woman with the red scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, the same scarf she wore every trip. The man who always waved whether or not anyone acknowledged him lifted his hand again, loyal to the habit. Near the far edge of the lot, the couple stood close together, murmuring back and forth, their hands linked even as they disagreed. Patty felt a small, private comfort in knowing these people, even if she didn't know them well. They belonged to this morning the way she did. Bernice eased off the accelerator and slowed the car, the tires crunching softly as they rolled into a spot near the front. She glanced at the clock on the dashboard and smiled. "Right on time," she said. "Told you." Patty nodded, unfastening her seatbelt. "Early is on time. On time is late." Bernice smirked. "You should put that on a shirt." The bus wasn't there yet, but it would be. It always was. Patty sat for a moment longer, looking out at the gathering crowd, feeling the low hum of anticipation settle comfortably in her chest. This was the threshold, the space between home and somewhere else. Patty adjusted her coat, squared her shoulders, and smiled to herself. The day was officially in motion.